Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Hello, my next level friend. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. Very happy to be here with you once again. Don't go anywhere because this is an awesome episode, particularly if you have ever wondered about licensing, how those licensing works, how do you start with licensing, all that. We have an awesome here advice from Juan de Lascurain, who is an artist and designer from Mexico City, who has traveled the world really expanding his brand through licensing. So you don't want to miss it. Check it out. But before I talk to Juan, I want to also let you know that we have now the Art Business Online Bootcamp totally free, available online. If you haven't taken the bootcamp, check it out. The bootcamp is a 3-day online training where you will learn all the latest strategies in the areas of marketing, sales, exposure, productivity, and wellness. This is a bootcamp that both my wife, Dr. Janina, and I have put together. We have made available for you. Maybe you have already taken it in the past, but maybe you have never. So check it out. I think you will be highly pleased with it. And all you have to do is just go to www.theartistnextlevel.com/bootcamp and you can take it totally free. It's pretty awesome, pretty cool. All right, well, let's talk about licensing. Licensing is one of those things that there are many questions around that subject. So today, you're going to hear from Juan de Lascurain. From living at a youth hostel and working out of Starbucks to his brand now selling over $1 million in licensing products. And yeah, you heard it right, over $1 million in licensing products. Juan's story is about overcoming obstacles, having faith, and dreaming big. Juan is an artist and designer from Mexico City. He travels the world painting and exhibiting his work, as well as commercializing his brand, Dream Big. He is also a sought-after speaker about entrepreneurship, design, and inspiration. And you're going to love our conversation, which is full of insight that I think if this is a topic that you are interested about, you will love. So with that, I welcome Juan de Lascurain. Hello, Juan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sergio. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
No, thank you for being here, my friend. It's pretty awesome that we can connect here. You are right now in Mexico City. I'm here in Chicago. You are at a Starbucks coffee. I'm here on my desk. So it's a great way to connect. I love technology. And we met recently through a conference we both were speaking at, to the SEA conference. Self-employment in the arts, which was wonderful. You did a great conversation there, and then you talked to a lot of artists who, were, attending the conference, and particularly you were talking about licensing, which is something that I think for artists there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of not information out there on what that is, how it works, and and this is something that you have, in my view, you have mastered because. From what I've seen that you've done and the research that I have done, and I've started following you as well, and you are very active, pursuing your goals and what you do as an artist. And I think it can be a really wonderful conversation. And I, ahead of time, I'm going to say thank you for spending a few minutes with us here at the Art Next Level Friends and kind of sharing what you do, because I think, you have really mastered this thing of licensing. But so before we talk about licensing itself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I'm a designer artist from Mexico City. I grew up in Mexico until I was 17. Mexico City and in Monterrey, Mexico.
Yeah.
But my background was always sports. I grew up playing tennis since I was very young. So I played tennis, and then when I was 17, I moved to the United States to play tennis in college. When I was young, I didn't even know I had, a talent for design or for art. I studied business, and then after college, when I graduated, I became a triathlete, another sport, and then I spent about 4 years traveling around the world competing as a triathlete. I did Ironmans.
Oh, wow.
And, a lot of those long, crazy races.
Yeah.
But I started back then I started a brand called Dream Big.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before I knew, I could paint or design. They started inviting me to give conferences,
Mm-hmm.
And to talk about sports and really about inspiring young people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go and I would always talk about following your dreams and having a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that just on the side. And then in the year 2000, I moved to Los Angeles and I started a tennis business. I started coaching tennis in Beverly Hills.
Okay.
And I was coaching celebrities and kids of celebrities, and that was like a very good job. But I felt like I was going to do more,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so one day I met the owner of a local nonprofit TV network in Los Angeles. It was a Hispanic nonprofit network,
Mm-hmm.
and he offered me to do a TV show on his network.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I never done TV, but that's really when I started Dream Big.
Uh-huh.
So Dream Big started as a TV show that I used to produce and host.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, that was about 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I did that show for 4 years, and then 2008. That's when I discovered my artistic and creative. Other creative talents.
Okay.
I was sitting at a friend's house and I started doodling on a napkin, and a lady saw me and she just told me I needed to paint. It was just like that, and I was just making like little scribbles on the napkin.
Right.
And so I listened to her, and about a week later I started painting just for fun at night. In my house, and it took me about a year to do like one painting, but I finished it, and I thought I'm like, wow, it's cool, and I just felt that it was easy for me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept painting. I painted like 4 or 5 paintings. Then one day I painted my jeans, so everywhere I went, people started commenting on my jeans, and I started painting jeans for people, and so people started paying me.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time I was about 36 years old, and people were like, hey, you should not pursue art so much, like do it as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Artists don't make money. A lot of the things that people always tell people on the creative.
Right. The typical stories. Yeah.
Yeah, the typical stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that I had a talent, and I knew what I wanted, and so I started writing down my goal, my vision, where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
So first it was just my original art, but about 2 years after I started, one day I started doing more commercial art, more graphic,
mm-hmm.
more graphic art,
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that I could do my graphic art, I printed it on T-shirts,
Mm-hmm.
and I printed 10 T-shirts, and I wore one, and everywhere I went, I had them on my backpack.
Okay.
And I was just selling them out of my backpack. If I met someone that liked them, they wanted one, so I took one out of my backpack.
Right.
And then I discovered licensing, but it was not until 2011.
Okay.
Actually, I moved back to Mexico City in 2011 after like 18 years of living in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine invited me to come to an event that they had here in Mexico. But, I had been painting for 3 years. I had been doing a TV show for 4 years for free because it was for a non-profit network.
Uh-huh.
And then in 2008, there was the big crisis in the U.S., so my tennis business was, it was not going that well.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, I was investing all my money on my, on my talent.
Right.
And so I ran out of money pretty much. So literally, I landed in Mexico City in 2011 with $200.
Mm-hmm.
And I got about a week after that, I got my first client here, a friend of my friend. And I was staying with my friend, but I thought, okay, I need to get real money. So I thought about going to a family member that has a lot of money and asked him if he would invest in my brand. And so I went to him. He said no. And so, like, it seemed like all the doors were closed.
We're closing, yeah.
Everywhere I turned, it was like, no. So literally, I ended up staying at a youth hostel downtown Mexico City in El Zócalo.
Yeah.
I was paying like $5 a night, but every day I went to this Starbucks in Polanco, which is an area in Mexico City.
Yeah.
And there one day I met a lady who printed notebooks.
Okay.
And talking to her, she said, "Hey, you should print some of my notebooks with your designs." And so I'm like, okay.
Did she see you? Did she see you drawing in the like?
I showed her.
Oh, okay.
Because I was going to Starbucks every day to, I was sitting there just on the tables, and I was working in the computer.
Oh, okay.
And I was talking to everybody that sat next to me, to see who they were, what they were doing. And so I showed her in the computer some of my designs, and she said, "Hey, so I print notebooks. You should do some with your designs."
Yeah.
And I mean, she told me how much she would charge me for 10 notebooks. So I just I was counting how many I could buy, how much money I had, and so I had enough money to buy 10 notebooks.
Okay.
And so she gave them to me about a week later, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna just sell them here in Starbucks. So every day I would go and I would sit on the table and put the notebooks, and I just started selling them to whoever sat next to me. And I mean, that's how I started, with merchandising. But it took about 6 more months for me to discover licensing.
Okay.
So I went from selling the notebooks on the table, and then I convinced the manager of that Starbucks to let me sell them on the counter. And then literally that Starbucks became my little store, my gallery, and my office.
That's awesome.
And then what I did was I tried to go to the big retailers to see if they would buy notebooks from me. And there was a lot of obstacles because most big retailers, they want everything on consignment.
Right.
And they pay you, 2 months later. And so you have to have enough money, and then they want, about 5,000 notebooks. And so I'm like, okay, that's not the route for me to go now. And so I kept looking for different ways to commercialize my designs. And one day I was at a retail store, and I was looking at some merchandising. It was Star Wars and Hello Kitty merchandising. And I looked at the tag of one of the T-shirts, and it said it was product licensed by certain manufacturer. And so I was like, hey, what's licensing? So I just went on the computer and I started Googling licensing and what it was. And, I discovered that the big brands like, Disney, Star Wars, many companies, I mean, even Microsoft licenses, their content and their programs. And
right.
So I was like, hey, that's a really good way for me to start. But, I knew nothing about it. So the first thing I did, and for people out there, whether it's artists or designers, the first thing I did was I developed a presentation, style guide.
Okay.
And because I already had a brand, called Dream Big, instead of licensing my art as an artist, I decided to license my brand. Yes, I'm the artist, but I created a brand with a message. I created a lifestyle brand with a message. And what I did at the beginning was I started incorporating some of the designs that I had, with my brand. So I made a presentation. I think the first one was, I don't know, 8 pages, between 5 and 8 pages. And I started calling, the companies that I knew were already working with other brands.
Okay.
And I would just call from my office, which was Starbucks at the time.
Right.
And just introduce myself, and I started trying to find out who the people responsible for licensing were. Usually the marketing department.
Okay.
Are the ones that handle all the licensing. And at the beginning there was a lot of obstacles, like, hey, nobody knows you. Mm-hmm. We can design ourselves.
Right.
You name it, But I knew I had original art. I knew my stuff was different than anything out there. Mm-hmm. So I just kept calling, and then I started about, maybe 8 months after I started, maybe a little before, is when I started signing my first licenses here in Mexico.
Okay.
My first license was with a notebook company. Then I started calling like bigger brands like Kleenex. Like I said, it took some time,
right.
before I started working with like bigger brands.
That's fabulous. And what I love about your story is that, from the beginning, since you discovered kind of, your artistic vision that what you had, that you said, I'm going to sit down and do my kind of goals or what I want to do. And kind of like that kind of set the tone to continue working hard and finding ways. And even you sitting at that Starbucks for a long time, kind of trying to connect with the person next to you, right? Before even going to Kleenex or some of the bigger brands that you have worked with over the years, just connecting with the person next to you. And I think that's a big lesson, because a lot of artists kind of get stuck in that pursuit of the big and great and big vision, but we forget that sometimes the next step is right next to you, is the person that you have at your shoulder, right? And how important that is. And I think as you were telling your story, it's like, wow, imagine if you had never done that, right? If you had never taken the time to connect with the person next to you, who you never know who they may be, right? Maybe that's the friend of a friend of a friend who can open an opportunity for you.
No, and it's funny because a lot of people think like, oh, I need to have an office.
Yes.
And they wait till they have a desk and an office. And for me, honestly, I still go to start, like yesterday I was at another Starbucks here in Mexico. And I just go, even though I have an office now and I have people that work with me, I still go and sit in Starbucks. And yesterday, for example, I was sitting there working, and this guy that I had a meeting with him like 2 years ago, he came in, he was like, hey, we haven't seen you. And I'm like, yeah. And, when I met with them, they're one of the largest they have, I don't know, maybe 200 stores all over Mexico. Wow. And they own like they bring big American brands to Mexico, like Aeropostal and Apple, and big brands, And so I started, we started talking, and then he said, hey, my father-in-law is coming right now, and his father-in-law came in, and he's the one that started the business.
Oh, wow.
So I started talking to his father-in-law, and now I'm going to have a meeting with his father-in-law, next week.
Wonderful.
If I was always stuck in my office with the doors closed, you never meet anyone.
Right.
And yes, it's, I started this. I started the art part 10 years ago, and it's been one person at a time.
Right.
One person at a time in Starbucks, one person at a time. That's how I met you. One person at a time.
Right.
The person sitting on the plane next to me.
Right.
And there's a phrase that I heard from Richard Branson that it really, because I've been doing this, for a while now, going places, not sitting in one same spot.
Right.
When he said this phrase, it really caught my attention. He said, I didn't get to where I am just by sitting in one place.
Right. Right.
and most people are afraid to even talk to the person sitting next to them.
Right, which is very
sometimes.
Yeah, which is very typical for creatives. We get involved in our thing in their studio, and become kind of strangers to the world, and a lot of opportunities out there. Something that you mentioned when we met at the conference, and you were talking to other artists, and you said persistence, right? One of the things that has helped you along your career is being persistent, right? You call, and if they don't answer, you don't say, "Oh well, forget it." But persistence, call again, or email them again, and that persistence. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people kind of get discouraged. They knock the door one time, and then they leave it and forget it.
Yes. My first job after college was for a company that collected. It was a collections company.
Oh, okay.
So my first job was calling people and have them pay their credit card bills, that they hadn't paid.
Which is not a good, good call to make, right?
No, it's a horrible call, and I needed to make money, and I needed to have people pay,
Right.
And so I really learned, one, patience, and two, persistence, And so when I started, my brand, just calling from zero, or emailing, I realized that sometimes you send, the people that are going to pay attention to you most of the time are busy people. It's not just somebody that's sitting in front of their computer waiting for emails to come through, They're really busy people. So I would start sending emails, and then sometimes, 3-4 days came by and I didn't hear anything. So most people think okay, maybe they didn't like my work, maybe they don't want to talk to me. We always start thinking of the negative things.
Right, we tell stories to
and
ourselves.
So I thought, okay, and so I thought, okay, I'm going to wait a week and email them again. And so when I started finding out, it was because, then they started replying. They're like, hey, I'm so sorry, I was so busy, sorry I didn't respond, but yes, let's meet. Or sorry, your email went to spam. Or, so some of the emails I got back were like, hey, thank you, but right now we're not interested. But for the most part, if you have something original, if you're honest about what you're doing, and if you have a story behind, which most artists and creative people, have a story behind, most companies and people out there will give you a meeting, maybe not the first email you send, but like I said, it's not because sometimes people don't respond, not because they don't like you, they don't like your work or what you do. It's just because they're so busy.
Right.
Especially the people that can make the decisions. Like the directors of marketing of Kleenex. Right. The guy is busy. He's not. So you have to almost keep reminding them that you exist.
Right.
I still do that even with people today that I'm already working with.
Yeah. Right.
I'm always sending all the new things that I'm doing. Like the last 2 days, yesterday and today, I probably sent about 3,000 emails.
There you go. Yeah.
With the new project that I have, just to remind people like, hey, this is my new project in Dubai. This is what I'm doing. I have email, I have WhatsApp,
Right.
Every contact that I made, over the last, 20 years.
Exactly.
I have them on the list.
No, and even when you came to Chicago, we had never met. We sat down, we had a little conversation for a few minutes, and we connected well. And then you follow up through the application. Which one did we use? Oh, through WhatsApp. Yeah, we used WhatsApp, and so through WhatsApp, then we started connecting, and you never know, right? How this will lead into in the future. So it's that little step, right, to making that connection and then moving forward. And something that I if we can also touch on a little bit is not only you are based in Mexico City, but you travel around the world with your brand, and you go around the world and you look for opportunities yourself, not just emails and see what happens. But you just came back from Dubai. You had a big project there, and so tell us a little bit about, for example, the Dubai project, which is a big one, the Burj Khalifa building, which is one of the most iconic buildings right now in contemporary architecture, and for example, finding a deal with your brand, with a brand like them, how do you approach that? You actually went there in person, correct?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, actually, when I started designing and painting, I always wanted to go to Dubai, even before I painted.
Okay.
I always thought it's like really cool what they were doing there.
Yeah.
I always wanted to go, and even 10 years ago, I was Googling and finding out what they were doing. And then when I started designing and painting, I thought, hey, I would love to develop like a line of merchandise with my designs, for them.
Yeah.
So I first went there like 6 years ago. I went just by myself, I just got on a plane and and went to Dubai. I had emailed some people, but the first time I went, I didn't have any meeting set up, like nothing. They hadn't replied.
Yeah.
But that time I went to the building, and I asked, hey, who is in charge of for example, the retail shop?
Yeah.
Then I went back, and then I had worked at Apple, like at an Apple store.
Yeah.
When I had no money and I was starting to paint.
Yeah.
And actually, I had a bunch of business cards from when I worked at Apple.
Okay.
Of people that I would sell computers to. And one day I was looking through the cards, and there was one card of this guy from Dubai there. And I'm like, hey, who's this guy? And actually, this guy is the guy that his company was the one that built the Burj Khalifa.
I'm not kidding.
He was the main guy, And actually, when I worked at Apple, I didn't like my job there.
Okay.
I was, 37 years old. I was selling computers with 20-year-old kids. I was like, what am I doing here? But anyway, so I saw who this guy was, and I sent him an email, and I said, hey, I sold you a computer, 3 years ago, or whatever, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm a designer now. I would like to meet with somebody in the retail part. And the next day I got an email from somebody in the retail part. And I sent them some of my work, and they were like, hey, next time you come to Dubai, let us know. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be there next month. I mean, I didn't have planned to go next month, but if they want to see me, I'm like, I will go next month, So I told them I was going to be there the next month. And I showed up in Dubai, and we started talking about me doing some merchandising with exclusive designs. And actually, the first 2 products launched in December, right now, inside the main shop. And then also when I was there, I saw that every day, when you're outside on the esplanade, looking into the tower, they do the LED screen show, every day.
Okay.
And so I asked them, I said, hey, if I develop an animation with my designs, would you also,
put it in there,
play it on the LED screen? Yeah. And usually they charge people. I mean, it's a big promotion. There's thousands of people every day out there,
Wow.
And they said yes. They said, well, do a sample. If we like it, we won't charge you. We'll start airing it. Actually, yesterday was the first day that started airing the new animation.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it's going to be all month of March.
Wow.
All month. It's like 3 times a day at night.
Okay.
Monday through Sunday. So, I mean, I had to invest. I went to Dubai 5 times before the products came out. I invested in doing the animation.
Right.
And, a lot of times when nobody knows you, you have to invest.
Right.
There's no other way.
Right.
If you don't invest if you truly believe in what you're doing, you will have no problem investing. But I know, or I meet a lot of people that even though they have the money, they won't put it into their own project. I'm like, well, if you don't put it into your own project, how do you expect people to invest in you if you don't really believe in what you're doing,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So anyway, that's just one example.
That's
one thing I'm doing.
That's wonderful. And kind of piggybacking on that idea of believing in your project and so on. Something that as an artist who may be listening to this podcast right now, they might be wondering, well, how do I know if my work would be fitable for merchandising? Are there? Does the work have to be digitized? Does the work have to be kind of bold in color? What are some of the things that artists should look for? Because not everything fits on merchandising, correct?
No, not everything fits on, but there's so many types of merch. There is like bedding, it depends your type of art. My art is very colorful, but then I'm also designing some stuff that is less colorful, more into the design part. But I think the main thing is for each person to pick a product that you think your art would fit in. Do some samples. There's some art, for example, that could be really good for greeting cards.
Okay.
For example,
Right.
But most of the companies that would license that art, they want to see the final product. They want to see like a sample of your art on the greeting card.
I see.
So, for example, with me, what I did was I did the notebooks. And I knew they were selling because I put them on the table at Starbucks, and people asked me like, "Hey, where do you get that, or what is that?" And so I'm like, "Okay." And then I did T-shirts, and then I did. But then I also, I have two types of art. I have one art that does not fit on merchandise, and then I have art that does fit on merchandise because I did it on purpose.
Okay.
I knew if I wanted to be successful and have my own stores around the world and have commercial product, I had to design specific for merchandising.
Right.
So there's two. There might be some artists that maybe their paintings can never be sold on merchandising. Unless they become really famous like Picasso and
Right. That's right.
The only other way to do it, to get into it, is to start designing specific for merchandising.
Right.
But it's a little bit like trial and error.
Right.
You do it on one product and then see if people like it, and then you start building on it.
Would you say that now, because we have the internet, we have social media, it's kind of a nice way also to kind of test what people like? You can look at your Instagram, for example, and you can see, what type of works are, people really responding to, connecting with. For example, if you were to kind of looking into promoting something in particular, now because we have this immediate connection with the public, you can test ideas, or A or B, right? And if you wanted to do something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much simpler now. Like for me also, I'm selling a concept. So I created my entire concept that I have one store right now in Mexico, in Acapulco, that I'm using that to create a concept so that I think in the world we live in, people are more keen to buy stories and concepts than just to buy another T-shirt. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, kind of the story that the brand stands for.
Yeah, yeah. So what I developed over the last all these years developing the concept, developing the story. My goal is also to inspire people, not just to sell them another T-shirt or another notebook. And when you go beyond just trying to get money from people,
right. No, totally. Well, Juan, I know
that's when you probably think more.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, I think the connection was getting a little weak there. But I know you are a busy man, and you have a lot of work, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But I have one last question for you, and then after that, also I'll ask you if you can share where can our friends find you on social media, on YouTube, and everywhere else if they want to see your designs. But before that, if you were to start today, knowing everything that you know now, but starting from scratch, what would be like the first 2-3 steps that you would do?
I think I would do it the same way I've done it. I mean, I've learned a lot along the way, but I would find, if you're already an artist or creative, like I would find the product that you think your designs will go well with. But before that, I would create the concept of what you're trying to sell.
Okay.
Not just, if you show up to a company with 5 designs, for the most part, the big companies be like, okay, well, great, but like, what's the concept? Who are you?
What are you about? Yeah.
Yeah, what are you, and especially to have like a long-term, like career in this, because there's a lot of people out there that I go to a lot of expos and they sell their designs. People will pay you $300. You sell them your design, and you'll never see it again. But nobody knows who you are, and
right.
But I would do the same that I've done. I think for me it's worked perfectly. Start small. Reinvest your money into making more products, contacting more people, travel around the world. I mean, the first 5 years. The last 5 years, I probably invested, so much money. I've been to about 25 countries in the last 5 years.
Wow.
To speak at conferences, to attend expos, to meet with, brands, to walk. The first thing I do when I get to a country, I go to the mall. It sounds stupid, but
yeah.
But I go and see, or, I go to the tourist destination and see what shops they have and what products they're selling, see what people, what people like, what people are buying. And that's how, I've done it. It's a lot of work, but it's not, rocket science.
Exactly. Well, that is pretty awesome. And Juan, if you can share, where can the friends find you on social media?
So all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and my YouTube channel, it's Juan, Juan, and then my last name is De Lascurain. It's D-E, D like David, E, and then L-A-S-C, like Charlie, U-R-A-I-N, like Nancy. So it's Juan De Lascurain. And also, if they put Dream Big World, he will come up on social media.
The searches. Fabulous. And what I'll do too is I will share some of your videos under the episodes, comments, and also your link, so that it's easy to find you as well through that. And Juan, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. That's more than anything what I admire from you. In the short time that I met you, is that you are willing to share what has worked for you, willing to to share your story and some of the tips that have helped you and that can help many others. And I think that's what really makes you also such a unique artist too in the world. And you're doing fantastic things, fabulous things. Congratulations on Dream Big. Continue dreaming bigger and bigger every year. We look forward to seeing your work and see how this whole thing can grow over time. Perfect. Thank you so much, and likewise. And we keep in touch.
And actually, I interviewed you when I was there. We did a short video.
Oh, yeah.
I'll send you that next week. I'll send you that next week.
Awesome.
We'll upload it next week on YouTube too.
That will be very awesome too, and I will share it with our friends here too at the Art Next Level. So thank you, my friends here at the Art Next Level. Thank you for listening to this interview with our friend Juan. Please follow him on social media. Check out everything that he's doing. Check out his brand, Dream Big. Fabulous story, fabulous ideas, and you can reach him as well over there. And don't forget to share this episode with your friends, something that you can help us do today. And don't forget to also give us a review on iTunes. That's one way in which you can help us to continue getting this podcast to more and more artists from around the world. Thanks, and I will see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.